For the past few years, I've been working at a cemetery on the far edge of town. A sprawling place, bigger than most people would think, catering to nearly the entire postal code. Now, it's not exactly the kind of job anyone dreams of getting. Not because I was afraid of ghosts or anything like that, but because of what people think when they hear where I work. To me, though, it was no different than a long-term storage facility. We both put boxes filled with lifeless things into the ground, never to be touched again. If anything, I'd argue a 4x8 box stuffed with a lifetime of someone's possessions holds more of their soul than the most expensive mahogany casket ever could. Still, despite the strangeness of it, the work turned out fine. Boring, even, at least, until the day I met her. 2 months ago, we had just buried a young woman. The service itself was uneventful, except for 2 things I remember clearly. Her sister hadn't shown up, and the family had argued bitterly over burial versus cremation. Those details stuck with me as I stood nearby, waiting for the mourners to leave. That was part of my job, hovering in the background, making sure teens didn't sneak in to deface headstones. But my real work came after the mourners were gone. I was the one who dug the graves with the excavator, lowered the caskets, and filled the earth back in. When the final mourner drifted away, dabbing their tears, I went to fetch the excavator. I was laying down the plywood board to protect the grass when I froze. Standing near the open grave was an umbrella, black, low to the ground, angled toward me in a way that completely hid whoever was beneath it. At first, I assumed it was just a relative who'd returned to say a private goodbye. So I waited politely, bowing my head as though I were giving them their moment. That's when I heard it, the music. A soft, lilting melody floated through the air. A delicate voice sang over the faint thump of rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. It was beautiful, but wrong, haunting in a way that raised the hairs on my arms. The notes felt out of place, unsettling, like they didn't belong in this world. I cleared my throat to let them know I was there. Instantly, the singing stopped, but the figure didn't move, didn't acknowledge me at all. The sun was dipping lower, bleeding red light across the headstones, and I was running out of time before darkness made my work impossible. I circled carefully around the umbrella, giving space to their grief, until I saw her. She was crouched there, smiling at me, a young woman, maybe mid-20s, her pale face painted stark white with jet-black lips and eyes lined dark as shadows. A goth black hair, black layers of clothing, a band shirt smeared with unreadable red letters. But what struck me most were her boots, towering platform demonias, but pink instead of black, gleaming, spotless. Even crouched, she hovered above the ground, smiling up at me like we were sharing a private joke. "Hi," she said softly. I stammered out a return greeting, fumbling for authority. I explained I needed to bring the excavator over, meaning she'd have to leave. But under her unwavering gaze, my words crumbled. I offered to give her a few minutes before I returned with the machine. Her smile widened. She thanked me. By the time I came back, she was gone. Not a trace of her anywhere. I figured she must have been the missing sister. I told myself I'd ask her when I saw her again. And I did see her again. The very next evening. There she was, kneeling by the freshly covered grave, umbrella tilted just so. And this time, I heard her clearly, the same eerie song. Only now I realized it wasn't from a speaker. It was her. The notes wound through the air, wrapping around my skull, seeping into my skin. My balance faltered. My body felt heavy and disoriented, like I was floating through space in someone else's control. When I finally regained myself, I was standing only a few feet away from her, though I had no memory of crossing the distance. She watched me with a neutral expression, no smile this time. She told me her name was Belle. When I asked about the song, she smiled faintly and said, "It's a cemetery song." I asked what that meant. "It's a song for the dead," she explained. Then, leaning closer, "Not for the living to mourn them, for them, so they can hear." Her calm certainty froze me, and when she began singing again, I turned and fled before the melody could drown me once more. That night, the dreams began. The first was vague. I woke up drenched in sweat, gasping, feeling like I was suffocating. But the second night, I remembered everything. I was trapped in crushing darkness, walls pressing in from all sides, my chest tight with panic. My fingernails scraped wood. The air grew thin. I woke screaming, soaked, my sheets wet with urine. The dreams never stopped. Each night, the same suffocating blackness. Each day, Bell returned, always an hour before closing, always singing by his sister's grave. I stayed far enough away to avoid the song, but I couldn't escape the unease of her presence. Then came the family's strange request. They wanted the body exhumed. Cremation after burial. Unheard of. We didn't even have the equipment. We had to rent a crane just to lift the casket. When we pried it open, what we saw inside still haunts me. The velvet lining was shredded, its cotton stuffing torn out and scattered like snow. Long, deep scratches carved into the wood. The girl's nails shattered to splinters. Her fingertips raw. Her face, I won't describe. But the worst detail was this. Her ears were stuffed with bloody cotton, so tightly packed that pieces spilled out when the lid opened. She had tried to block out the song. I never saw Belle again after that. But sometimes, in the deepest part of my sleep, when I'm pulled back into those nightmares of suffocating dark, I hear her. That same distant, haunting voice, singing for the dead. Buried alive? The funeral was small. Only a few relatives lingered as a casket was lowered into the earth. Most people thought Mark had died peacefully in his sleep. They didn't hear the faint scratching beneath the sheets that morning. They didn't notice his lips twitch. They didn't see his chest rise the way his wife did. Just once. The soil covered the coffin quickly, muffling any sound from within. But if someone had stayed after dark, if someone had leaned close to the fresh mound, they might have heard it. The thumping. Slow at first, then frantic, fists pounding against the wood. Mark was awake. The darkness pressed against his eyes, his lungs screaming for air. He tried to shout, but his throat filled with date. He must have bitten through the lining somehow. His fingernails tore as he clawed, splinters embedding deep into his hands. Still, no one could hear him. Hours passed. His strength waned. Silence replaced the desperate banging. 3 days later, the groundskeeper returned to fix a tilted headstone near Mark's grave. He paused. The earth above the coffin was disturbed, cracked, as if something had tried to claw its way out. He bent down, listening. At first, nothing. Then, faintly, he swore he heard it. A rasping breath, and a whisper. "Please, still here." The groundskeeper stumbled back, heart racing, staring at the soil shifting ever so slightly. Somewhere beneath, Mark was waiting. Still alive,